Hi friends, welcome to the Friends of Franz podcast. In this safe space, we are favored in each episode with the presence of an expert guest from different fields and specialties as we learn about their life journeys, their successes, possible regrets, and realizations, their work, why they do what they do, and even their life outside of work. In here, we tear down common myths and misinformation with up-to-date, evidence-based science and data simplified for anyone to digest. We don't shy away from topics that can sometimes be polarizing or taboo. We normalize the humanization of healthcare and its workers, and we promote the importance of self-care and safeguarding your mental health. Please keep in mind that the conversations in this podcast are for educational and informational purposes only. They are not implied or intended to be a substitute for professional medical diagnosis, advice, or treatment. Please always seek the advice of your physician or other qualified healthcare providers regarding a medical condition. Are you ready? Let's go!
Hi!
Diana!
How are you? So good
How
to
are
meet you in real life.
Oh my gosh, yeah. Finally meeting you like face to face somehow.
I know.
Thank
How
you
are
so much
you?
for joining me. I'm good. Time's just flying. I've been so excited for our live stream tonight. Thank you so much for joining. I know we've been planning this for probably a few months now, right?
I know. Yeah, it's been a while. It's here. Time flies though.
I know. And if you could just first please introduce yourself to everybody. Thank you again for being here.
Yeah, thank you. So I'm Diana. You guys may know me as Catalyst for Self-Care on Instagram. My business name is actually Self-Care Catalyst, and our sort of mission is really just to support nursing professionals while they move through burnout and really look at their well-being. We kind of believe that no nurse is meant to do life for nursing alone, and we really love supporting this community. It's really, when I say we, it's just
No, I love it.
You know,
and
whatever.
all of us, right?
Someday it'll be a bigger thing, and I have big dreams for what I'm doing. You know, we really love doing, we support this community through mentorship, through community, through education, through empowerment. I love kind of speaking with nurses in the DMs about what they're struggling with and really helping them. I kind of view it as like talking to your bestie while you break up with burnout, ugly cry or not, you are supported by this community. So
yeah, definitely. I feel like every nurse, and I think in the grander scheme of things, every healthcare professional can like really relate to that. I think especially within the past few years, right? Of what's been going on in the world.
I know,
right?
but it was a problem before, man.
Oh, definitely. One of my friends was like, all of the problems that we're talking about now, it's always been there. It's just being exposed to the light because of the pandemic, right? Especially how it is in the healthcare system, especially, I think many bedside folks can also talk about that too, right? But before we get into all that, we have a lot to talk about today. So many exciting things to talk about and so many real things that we have to talk about. Before that, I just want to get into you first. Is obviously you're a nursing mentor and mentor. If you could just take us through your journey that led you to where you are now. And I also love to introspect as to why you pursued healthcare, specifically nursing.
Yeah, great question. So I had kind of like an atypical journey. I currently work as a neuro NP. I used to work in the hospital. I left the hospital years ago at the deep, darkest time in my burnout.
Yeah.
I work outpatient. I've been outpatient for about 8 years
The
with no desire to return.
Yeah.
Zero desire to return. I actually love what I do. It's been a long road, but we're in a good place. But I actually was a bio major. I was raised by 2 chemists. So I was kind of like the outsider. My parents were like, oh my God, you're in college. Like, what has happened? So the only reason I got through organic chem was my dad. He came and tutored me like every single week while I was in college. It was definitely not my strength, but I made it through. I was a bio major. I really wanted to work in a lab. I thought I'd be PhD and research and all the things. I got internships in college. Like, I was definitely a box checker. I'm sure like most people in here can totally resonate with that. But I did get a great job out of college. I went and worked at Dana-Farber, which is a phenomenal research institute in Boston, doing melanoma research. But it was one of those things I realized, like, I'm not a lab rat. Like, I love to be with people. Like, I felt very disconnected from patients. They were kind of these, like, ethereal people out there somewhere, but I didn't have any direct connection with them. So I was just kind of, shooting the shit with my lab bench mate. He was like, have you ever thought of being a nurse? I think you'd be, like, really good at it. And it's like, oh, wow. Like, words that changed the trajectory of my life. I never really gave it much thought. I had, nurses in my family, like not a ton, but, there have been some nurses in my family, people working in medicine, but I had never really thought about it. And that's when I really decided to make a huge shift. I, did exactly what I now teach my mentees, which is like looking at those core values, like what I want my life to look like what do I feel is lacking? What do I actually like? And then I decided that becoming a nurse practitioner specifically was what I wanted to do. Yeah. And it was more like the idea of that autonomy. And so I quit my job, went back to school. I ended up doing a direct entry program, mostly because I didn't want to do like bachelor's. I was like, I don't want to take out that many loans. So I went to a direct entry program, which I know are very like controversial in the nursing NP world, but it was a great experience for me. Like, honestly, it was hard. Yeah. It was definitely like throwing you in the deep end. And I worked while I was in school because I like had no money. So, it was a good time.
Yeah. Oh my gosh.
And then I graduated, went into neuro kind of by accident. It was one of those things I told myself, like, I know what I don't want to do. Yeah. And neuro, ICU, ER are like absolute no's. And I've been in neuro for like 13. So goes
the
to
least
show.
You expect, right? The least you expect. Wow, that's so amazing. I mean, you're right. Like someone's word or just one instance can change the whole trajectory of your whole life, right?
Yeah, and just like that little seed.
Yeah, I mean, like as a daughter of two scientists and now it's like you're helping others navigate through this deep field that we will talk more about, right? And like we were saying, there's problems being exposed now into the light within the healthcare system. Specifically, we'll talk about nursing because we're both nurses too, right? That have been going on for years. I mean, my mom's been a nurse for 30 years. She's been telling me about these problems, since I was younger. And I mean, I also never, imagined I would be a nurse as well. So when my mom would talk to me about her nursing career as I was growing up, I was like, okay. So I feel like I had an idea of what it meant to be a nurse. And then when I became a nurse myself, especially in bedside nursing, I was like, oh my God. I never imagined any of this.
Reality.
Yeah, it's like it's different when you're actually the one in the situation, right? And I think that's one of the first things I wanted to talk about is I'm also not too far from being a new grad just years ago, right? As we go into our conversation, go into burnout, all of that starts and stems from somewhere, right? And as a mentor, you just don't talk about burnout. You talk about self-care, talk about boundaries, you talk about self-affirmation, and all these beautiful things that I want to talk about, especially given many of the horrific news we've been hearing about a lot of sad stories and sad realities of nurses, of physicians, and other healthcare workers, right? And I wanted to take it back to the very, very, very first day, whether inpatient, outpatient, we've all been newbies, we've all been new grads, we've all been new people on the floor, new nurses. And I want to ask if someone out there is listening and will listen to our episode who's new and don't know how to manage all the cascades of these emotions, right? Like you're a new guys, like, I don't want to talk to the family members. I don't know how to talk to the family members. I remember being new and I was like, and I knew that one of my patients still had the family member inside the room. I was already like, gosh, how am I going to get through this shift? I don't know how to talk to this family member. I don't know how to talk to the providers. I don't know how to believe in myself. Do I know what I'm doing? How do you navigate that as a newbie, as a new grad, as a new nurse, or even like an intern doctor, right? It was like you on the floor. How do you manage all of those emotions?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think the first thing that I always try to convey when it's someone who's new is step one is really just remember you've been new before. You've had a lot of day one. And I really encourage people to look back on all those day ones because you did great. You survived, you killed it. And maybe you made mistakes, but you learned from those mistakes. So those day ones will be evidence in your little evidence box that you actually are far more capable than you think. I think also for new grads, it's important to understand nobody expects you to know everything on day one. Absolutely. In fact, if you think you know everything on day one, that's more problematic, right?
Red flag.
Huge red flag. I would argue that nobody knows it all. I was just talking to one of the attendings I worked with recently about a complex headache patient. And he was like, I don't know, let's look it up. And he's like literally retiring next year, you know, and he's one of the most like senior people that I respect the most in the practice. So it shows you that everybody questions things, and we should question and asking for help is totally okay. But like, know who your allies are, because sometimes there are kind of rude, jerky people out there, and knowing like who are your people in your unit or on the floor, whatever it may be, is huge, and it'll serve you so well. But really, you can't compare like your day 1 to someone else's day 50 or 100 or year 20. You know, we're just kind of all imperfectly imperfect, and we're on this like learning journey. And I think it's important for anyone, whether or not you're a new grad or not, to just like celebrate those wins every single day. And I know that sounds like very Mr. Rogers, but it's so good for confidence building. It's really helpful to like acknowledge the things that we're doing well, because we are so quick to be like, oh my God, I know nothing. Like, I'm the worst. Like, that care plan was terrible. Like, my notes were horrific. Like, that procedure I did terribly. Like, whatever. So I think like acknowledging the things that we did really well in a week, in a day, and whatever. If you're having a hard hour, like just reel it in and do it then too. I think those things can be really helpful. But like really giving yourself a ton of grace, and you know, knowing that you'll look back in a year and be like, wow, I've grown so much.
It's no longer October, but let me tell you a horror story. I was working bedside as a nurse. 12-hour shifts, 12,000 to 15,000 steps per night, always exposed to dripping blood, pee, and other fluids. And guess what? I was wearing skateboarding shoes for almost a year. Because my feet were killing me, I switched to more comfortable sneakers, but had to go through 3 pairs because I would find new stains after shifts. And over time, as the pandemic came, I was too exhausted to think about my feet or even changing my footwear. I was then introduced to Clove, and I no longer had to do the thinking. To support the steps of those who dedicate their lives to caring for others, Clove collaborated with healthcare professionals and innovative designers to create a shoe that prioritizes the needs of those in the front line. These are sneakers designed for healthcare. They already did the thinking. Easy to clean and fluid repellent, I no longer have to worry about those red streaks or pee-soaked socks since I use the same wipes at work to remove every stain. Just this summer, one of my patients unexpectedly bled from the radial artery access site and made a pool of my brilliant whites on the floor. A few swipes with the purple wipes, all clean and with no damage. Plus being squeak-free, I no longer have to worry about waking up a sleeping patient. Layered with comfort, sore toes are no longer my problem since the shoes are now upgraded with double the cushioning, 50% more arch support, and a perfect heel pad. On top of this, the grippiest outsole also allows for a fluid channel technology while maintaining super secure footing. And yes, it's 100% cruelty-free and vegan. I love all of my Clove shoes, and I hope that you can get ready to also step into your perfect pair. Use code FRANZ, that's FRANZ, or visit goclove.com/Franz for 15% off your first pair of Clove shoes at checkout. I am no stranger to seeing patients that can't get the care they need because they can't afford it. Even if they get a medical recommendation that will help them, oftentimes, medication costs are so high it's totally out of reach, or they would have to choose between feeding their family or paying rent in order to get the medication, so people have to go without. After living through a pandemic, on some level, we all know the healthcare system in the United States is broken. That is why I am happy to see that mission-driven businesses are now taking an interest in the problem, because it's not getting solved fast enough. Better Remedies is one of those companies doing something to really meaningfully help people with medical expenses, in particular, getting their medications. Better makes over-the-counter medication, think pain, gas, cough and flu, sleep, all the essentials for your medicine cabinet. For every box of Better Remedies sold, they cover the cost of someone's life-saving medication for a month. And this is someone who would otherwise have to choose between food, rent, gas to get to work, or otherwise caring for themselves or their family. It is such an easy switch to make. You get the same great relief you need for 10% less than other big name brands, and someone who doesn't have the access to their meds will get the help they need. In general, it's good to know the active ingredient you need for your symptoms rather than just buying a big name brand. It'll save you money, and because active ingredients are FDA regulated, you'll still be getting the results you need. Plus, if you buy from Better, you are also helping someone else in a big way too. It's putting your headaches, farts, and insomnia to work. And that's something we can all feel better about. I've been buying my Better Remedies products at Walmart at any time I need to stock up. And you can do the same. Everything is priced about 10% less than the big brands, works just as well, and makes an impact on something that is really important and that I am personally very passionate about. Make the switch next time you need relief. You'll feel better and be doing some good. I love what you said about the evidence box. That's actually the first time I've ever heard that. Like, that's so true. I mean, you're right. We've been new somewhere before, right?
Oh my
And
gosh.
even now, like, I always think, oh wait, I was able to do that. You know,
Yeah.
I could do this too, right?
Yeah.
I was able to overcome that, and that's true. I agree with that. But I think it's also like a conscious, cognizant effort, right? Of
No,
always
100%.
reminding yourself. And how do you build that confidence then? You know, in times of stress, when you're new, like thrown in the fire, right?
Yeah.
How do you maintain that cognizance that, okay, I'm new, I have self disbelief, you know, I don't
Mm-hmm.
believe in myself. How do you recalibrate your mind? Do you have
Mm-hmm.
techniques on how to recalibrate your mind in a stressful moment? Or even one of the questions I wanted to ask too is, every new grad nurse, I think there's that pre-shift anxiety, right? That
Totally.
lasts for God knows how
Oh
long.
my God, it's
6
the
months
worst, isn't
to a
it?
year.
Ah,
Oh my gosh. I remember each time before work, I can't sleep the day before because I'm already thinking about the shift already, right?
exactly.
And I'm
Exactly.
like, oh
Yeah.
my gosh, what am I going to encounter? How do you recalibrate your mind to be cognizant that even in stressful time or right before a shift or the day before a shift, that, you know what, I can handle this, I can do this, I have this evidence box at my
Mhm.
disposal, right?
Yeah, that's a great question. So, I mean, when it comes to, first of all, when you're in like fight or flight, stress response, freeze, whatever it is, it's really hard to be like, I need to do X,
Yeah,
Y, Z, right? I mean, let's be
yeah,
honest. It's
yeah.
it's hard to say that. So I
Mhm,
would say like I actually prefer like a post shift debrief, reflection, what have
mhm,
you,
mhm,
because I think it's really hard in the heat of the moment to do those like
mhm,
reflections, especially when you have like a billion patients and a
mhm.
million things to do and like people are
Yeah,
talking to you.
yeah.
It's hard. I encourage people to like take breaths and do these things throughout the day, but managing your pre-shift anxiety is going to start the minute you leave your shift
Yeah, yeah.
because we immediately snap into like,
Mhm.
oh my god, I didn't do this. Like all those like things come up. The negative self-talk comes in.
Yeah.
All the like imposter syndrome hits hard. You know, we finally kind of sit in our car. We're coming out of fight
Mm.
or flight. We're taking
Yeah,
a deep breath, having a sip of water, and we're like, oh my god, I'm like a terrible human. I'm not good at
yeah,
my job.
yeah, yeah.
So what I encourage my mentees is to do a post ship reflection. And actually, there's one I
Mhm,
have in my bio link that is
mhm,
free to download that I've used a million times with
mhm,
clients.
mhm,
And basically, the three really killer questions to ask yourself are, what am I feeling? Because you've got to name it to tame it,
mhm.
right? So mad, angry, hungry, sad, happy, excited, like miserable, whatever it is. And what do you want to feel? Like maybe, and it's not just like, I want to feel happy.
Yeah,
It might
yeah,
just be like, I want to not feel shitty, or I want to like feel content, or
yeah.
just like calm,
Mhm, mhm,
whatever it may be for you. So,
mhm,
what is that feeling that you want to feel?
mhm.
And bring awareness to it. And
Yeah.
then ask yourself, like, what is step one to get?
Step 1. I
You
like
know, because we
that.
don't have to know, like, step 100. We don't have to,
Yeah,
like, project ourselves to a specific outcome.
yeah.
It's just, like, what is step one? And maybe that means,
Mhm,
like, taking a breath. Maybe it means, like, calling your best
mhm.
friend because you want to laugh. Maybe it's having a drink of water because you feel super, like, parched and you
Yeah,
haven't had any water all
yeah.
day. Whatever that is. But that is like the first step in
Mhm,
taming your pre-shift anxieties to
mhm.
like tame your post-shift
Yeah.
anxiety. Have like a
Sure.
going home ritual, come
Mm,
home, like really like leave work at
yeah,
work as
yeah,
best you can.
yeah.
You know, maybe that means setting boundaries.
Mhm,
Maybe that means having like a hard conversation with your
mhm,
partner to be like, hey,
mhm.
can I just have 20 minutes and you
Yeah,
know, whatever you need to
yeah,
ask
yeah,
for,
yeah.
and then getting good sleep,
Mhm,
you know, making sure that you don't pick up your phone first thing in the morning and slip into
mhm.
like comparisons
Yeah,
or stress or check your email and you're like,
yeah,
ah,
yeah,
uh,
yeah. Oh
it's
my god.
about like taking a few
Mhm.
intentional moments and
Yeah,
like making space for you in your life, to
yeah.
be honest.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like comparison syndrome, it's so hard, especially when you're new and you're in a room full of
Totally.
experienced and, you know, very knowledgeable people who's
Yeah.
been there for years or even months longer than you, right?
Mhm.
And I love what you said about the step one. Like, just looking at the step one, I,
Yeah.
I think, like most people, and I can relate to that too, it's like when you're new, you're like, wait, when am I gonna get to that point? When am I gonna get
Yeah. We
to
want
this
it so
point? Yeah,
bad.
yeah.
Yeah.
When do
We're
I get to that?
achievers.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
When do I get to that point where I no longer have anxiety, right? Like you shift
Yeah.
anxiety,
Yeah.
but then it's like taking it day by day, you know, post
Totally.
shift after post shift, right? And I love what you talked about. You also mentioned about imposter syndrome. And
Mm.
I think this term has been flying around every account that I've seen. And it's true
Yeah.
because it's such a true thing, right? What are your most favorite, maybe let's say top one or top two, self and positive affirmations that you tell yourself in the midst of a plague of imposter syndrome and just lack of self-confidence, and or maybe you have a bad day and you couldn't accomplish what you wanted to accomplish. I remember being new and I'm like, I miss that IB. I miss this. I miss that. And it like ruins your whole day, right? Oh, I forgot to do this or that, or I didn't do this the way I wanted to do this. What are your top two self-affirmations to, I don't know if the word ward off is correct, or so just again to recalibrate your mind from that negative self-thinking and, just like attacking and condemning yourself the whole day and just changing your mind to a positive light.
Yeah. I love a good self-affirmation. I mean, who does? Yeah. So I do actually really love self-affirmations. I do believe that they work. I know some people find them hokey, but there is so much evidence to support that these really do help kind of retrain your thoughts, and what we think matters. Like what we think determines how we act, and what we do determines our results, right? So it actually really does matter. So be tuned into how you talk about yourself. That's, again, step one is self-awareness, that emotional intelligence piece. Oh my God, I have so many. So there's a lot on my page. I actually have a guide about it. I made a little guide. So there's some for like imposter syndrome, boundaries, like confidence, all the things. And I have like a pre and post shift affirmation freebie in my bio for people to download if they want. I love that. There's like a secret project on the side that's happening too. So TBD. But one of my absolute favorites that I use all the time, and it's not really for confidence, it's more for perfectionism, is done is better than perfect. So I use that a lot when I'm charting, where I'm like, okay, all the information's there. I'm totally overanalyzing this. Like, let's just move on. Because it can be like that analysis paralysis, right? And sometimes perfectionism can kind of like lead into like procrastination, So that's when I use a lot. And I also love when I'm in the heat of the moment and feeling the imposter syndrome. It's I am doing the best that I can with the resources that I have. That's like one of my like really good favorites. There's some really good ones for boundaries. So I believe in my value. I respect my value. I speak up for my value. There's a lot of good.
I love it.
What's your favorite? Do you have like a fave?
Yeah, I think someone told me once that it's okay to be upset. Right? Like I can be upset. Like I can feel what I'm feeling. Right? Yeah. And I think I also saw this. I think I read it in the book once, back in high school. I think the perks of being a wallflower was just like pain demands to be felt, and people translate to that, frustration, disappointment. Like you're allowed to feel those things, because I'm human, and while I feel that, I can also feel love for myself. Like I could feel proud of myself as well. So I love all of those. Yeah, I love all of those affirmations. Actually, I'm very curious. As a nurse practitioner, right? I feel like definitely the role of being a provider is different, from being a staff nurse or a bedside nurse, where obviously beyond the greater responsibility, the scope of responsibility, I can imagine how much more hard-hitting like perfectionism is and imposter syndrome is, because you are managing patients' lives in the sense that you can diagnose, you can treat, you can prescribe, right? What do you think are the biggest afflictions of negative self-talk as your role as provider? Versus like, nurse.
I think it's like way more, at least my own experience, is way more of an issue like early on, like with imposter syndrome. And I feel like, again, like those limiting beliefs of like, I'm not enough, I'm not good enough, I'm not smart enough, like all that stuff that, is work throughable with the right tools. It's something that we do in mentorship, but it was definitely more prevalent when I was a new grad. I think, again, it's just really important to talk to other human beings, like find your allies. I think anyone you speak to, like I have many like NP like colleagues that I super duper respect that are super duper smart, and like talking to them, like everybody's felt that way, So you can say like, hey, like I'm kind of feeling like I'm not like really good at this, or like my notes are kind of crappy. Like asking for feedback is great. Having someone like just tell you their experience can be really validating. It's really, literally everyone has felt those feelings. So I think validating that they're normal in and of itself helps. And then again, like being tuned into it and saying to yourself, like, no, I've treated many people, like this patient sent me a thank you note or whatever, like whatever's in your evidence box to show you that like it's you actually I save all that stuff. Like if patients write me a little thank you note or like I get an email like, hey, you did a great job on blah, blah. I have a little place for those. And I encourage anyone listening to do that because on those bad days when you're like, oh,
you look back at it,
Because, no, girl, you're good. You just had a bad day. It doesn't mean you're a bad NP. It doesn't mean you're a bad nurse.
And I agree with that. It's like, I think this quote has been going around for years, right? It's just a bad day, or it's a bad minute, or it's a bad
it's not a bad life.
It's not a bad life.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and we were also talking about boundaries, right?
Yeah.
And I think boundaries with work is closely tied to work-life balance. I think for different positions, let's say like when I was in bedside, right? Like it was easier to have a balance in the sense that once I finish my shift, once I go home, like that's it.
Totally.
But there's still a lot of things that even though your responsibility in the shift, whether bedside or inpatients or wherever profession, right? Though it might end in that shift, I feel like the mental aspect of it 100%. Can like linger on and seep through after post-shift, right? How do you maintain a work-life balance in the sense that once you finish work, it's like, that's it, like you don't think about work. Do you think it's more of a mental and behavioral practice, or are there things that we could do like at home to actually create a demarcation line between work and this is home?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I think also it depends on your job. Because people who like do telehealth from home, it's kind of tricky, right? But you can like, there's definitely strategies to, even with telehealth, like change your clothes, like do a workout class, like do something to like demarcate like the end of your workday. And yes, I agree with you 1,000,000%. Like for bedside nurses, it's more like the emotional impact of their shift that they're bringing home with them. For like NPs, sometimes it is like charting at home or like their like results that they're checking on the weekend. So I think it really depends on your role. And of course, like there are something like, as an NP, if you are, expected to have a chart done in 72 hours, like you should have it done within 72 hours. That may mean working on a Saturday. But, you may leave a chart for 24 hours and it's not the end of the world. But I think it depends on your job. But again, I think when we leave work, it's important to bring awareness. And it goes back to like those post-shift rituals and those post-shift like moments where you create space for you in your life. I also think it's important to like know what you want your life to look like. It's so easy to like, it's what we actually do like in the very beginning of mentorship, because if you don't give your brain a target, it's hard to like get there. So if you don't really know what your hobbies are or what you like to do, or like, you're so burned out, you're just like super low energy and you just want to go home and eat Cheetos. Like it's hard to, not think about all that stuff. I encourage therapy. I encourage, again, like community, like talking to people in your, like nurses, healthcare providers need to come together. We need to talk about things. But there's a lot of tools, but I do think like it kind of depends on what you do. Definitely. But most of it is really, again, like knowing what your life outside of your job even looks like to you. And then again, like what actions support that.
And that's so important, because before you know it, when you don't take all of those into consideration and you don't actually attack it and face it head on, right? Like it all gets lumped up together and like it all accumulates. And then all we see is the word we've been hearing a lot is the word burnout, right? Burnout, most people can agree it's like it's different for different people, right? There's different warning signs for different people, and people's thresholds of stress and exhaustion is different, right, from one another. Do you think there's a universal, or there are universal signs of burnout that we should be wary of, especially within healthcare? And maybe even more subspecially in nursing, or even for providers like NPs or even like CRNAs, right? Are there things that we have to look out for?
Yeah, and that's a great question. So first of all, burnout for me took me 100% by surprise. I was totally in denial. I was in like yes person mode, like doing mode, like go, 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 like not coming up for air. I knew I was miserable. I knew I was like crying all the time. but I had no idea what burnout even was, let alone what a boundary was or what anything else was. Like, and that's honestly part of my why for doing what I do now, is because I deeply feel like this is stuff we should talk about, like in nursing school. Like, it shouldn't be something that we read about on Instagram,
Or
I'd
learn
like people to
along
come to
the
my page
way.
to do that, but I really, my goal is to like bring more of this education earlier on so people know what to look out for. But, there's so much research that's been done about burnout, and kind of the trifecta that they always talk about is exhaustion. And it's not like, oh, I'm so tired, like, I don't feel like going to the gym, I'm tired. It's not that kind of exhaustion. It's exhaustion that doesn't respond to the usual activities that would energy. Depersonalization is kind of another one of the trifecta. And that's really that, like, disconnection from your role, right? Where, a lot of people talk about, like, getting annoyed with patients. Like, why are you sick? Why are you here? Like, and it's a terrible feeling. And that kind of gets wrapped up in moral injury, which is another completely different topic. But it's that disconnection from your role where you don't really feel like there's no purpose there. And then there's the lack of personal efficacy, which is really deeper into that, like, well, what I do doesn't matter anymore. What's the point? Why am I here? And that, again, is kind of looped up in moral injury. We saw that with the pandemic, like the idea that we know what kind of care we want to give, but we can't because of the limitation from the system and whatever institution that you work at. That's like a whole other topic. But those are big things. And then in terms of like symptoms and signs, there's so many. They can be emotional, like I definitely withdrew, irritability, depression, obviously, anxiety, all those kinds of things, headaches, GI upset, like literally dreading your everydays, dreading going to work, dreading, like that kind of constant feeling of impending doom. There's so many signs and symptoms, but it can be different for everybody. And it may just be like deep exhaustion and feeling like you're just not supposed to be doing what you're doing. Like, I almost left nursing entirely. And I do believe at this point, like now looking back, that was really the burnout and the imposter syndrome and just like feeling like I wasn't enough talking, and it was really once I understood that like I wasn't abnormal. I was working in an abnormal work environment. I was in a position where my environment was creating this problem, and I wasn't the problem. So that's now what I teach. Burnout is a normal response to abnormal working conditions. And so it doesn't mean you're in any way deficient.
Having worked as a nurse in cardiac surgery recovery and outpatient interventional cardiology, I learned that listening is a vital part of the field. But beyond listening to what patients say, it's also important to hear what they don't say. And many times, you can hear this in the stillness and quietness of the room as their chest thumps in rhythms that can range from normalcy to urgency. A person's heartbeat is not only a sign of life, but also a sign of its quality. According to the CDC, arrhythmias, or abnormal heart sounds, have an expected prevalence of about 1.5% in the general population, with atrial fibrillation being the most common. This is why it is so important that we can adequately hear and detect heart and even lung sounds that may be detrimental to human life. Echo provides smart digital stethoscopes, such as the 3M Littman Core digital stethoscope, that help you check for signs of heart and lung disease in seconds during physical exams with unprecedented enhanced stethoscope sound and automated detection. This is all through a quick pairing with your mobile device. This is made possible by features such as having up to 40 times amplification, active noise cancellation, wireless listening, auto-triggered heart murmur and atrial fibrillation detection, and real-time visualization of sound and ECG that you can share as a consult with a trusted colleague or specialist. Every patient encounter deserves exceptional care. Hear clearly and care confidently with Echo. The virtual space is flooded with so many different brands, resources, and gears made for healthcare workers from all disciplines. From scrubs to pins and even compression socks, it can truly get overwhelming trying to find the best product fit for you. Links to these items can get lost, and the list can get so long that you forget what you actually needed to purchase for your next work shift. This is why I am so grateful to partner with Lumify, the community marketplace for healthcare workers all in one app. Finding the brands you love, discovering new tools, and accessing your resources and communities shouldn't be difficult. Instead of going to 50 different websites to access what you need, you can find it all on Lumify, where over 200 brands, organizations, and resources are united with one goal: to support healthcare workers. As a nurse-founded company, Lumify believes that all healthcare professionals deserve a trusting and supportive community of their peers. In Lumify, you can easily communicate with your peers to trade advice, share product recommendations, and discuss what resources are best to support you. You can even earn Lumify points on every purchase you complete, which you can save for product discounts. Whether it's mental health resources, or fluid-resistant shoes, hi Clove, or stethoscopes, hi Echo, or podcast, welcome to Franz. Lumify is trusted by over 75,000 healthcare professionals at the bedside and beyond, including myself. Enter this new healthcare ecosystem where you can get 10% off using the code LumifyFranz. That's LUMIFYFRANZ at lumifycare.com or the Lumify app available for download on iOS devices. It's a one-stop shop, and I hope you drop by. Regarding to the abnormal working conditions, by the way, I love that recalibration of that mindset, right? Like, it's the system around me. You were recently on Life After Medicine podcast with Dr. Chelsea Surgeon, right?
Yeah.
Who was an OBGYN resident doctor who dropped out of residency, and she's doing a new completely career out of medicine, right? Yeah, and I wanted to ask your take on that. Is when channeling all of our conversations on burnout and exhaustion and depersonalization. When do you think that exhaustion is? We can fix this, as obviously that you have in your story, right? That you almost left nursing, but you're still here, right? And you're doing. When is exhaustion or the impending doom of burnout? When is it salvageable, and when is it a sign that, oh, maybe this career is not for me? Maybe it's time to look somewhere else.
Yeah. So I would argue it's not the burnout that's the problem. So I think anyone who's suffering from burnout can overcome that, whether or not you stay in nursing or not. Like, I want to definitely make sure that people understand, like, if you feel burned out, like, this is not forever. It's not permanent, and it will get better, right? But it is about looking at your work environment. So I would say, like, how do you know when your work environment is beyond salvageable?
Okay. I
don't know. Mostly because, like, truly, you have to just, like, reel it back, like, zoom out and ask yourself, like, what is triggering my burnout? Like, where is the problem? It's like when we're looking at a patient, right? Like, where's the disease process? Where is the infection? Is it your lack of boundaries? Is it that you have a toxic colleague? Is it that you are inadequately compensated? Is there lateral violence on your floor? Is there, a bully situation? Is it, like, what is the problem? Is it your schedule? You hate it and you, like, hate working nights? Whatever it may be. And then asking yourself, like, what's controllable and what's not? Right? Because there are things that are controllable that we have agency over. And then there's a lot of things that we do not have as much agency over in the short term. Like, we can fight the fight, but, like, in the next, like, couple days, like, it's not going to make a huge difference. So it's about, like, really looking at those things and then asking yourself, like, is it fixable or not? And be honest with yourself. Like, for me, I was in a toxic work environment. It took some time to realize that, but it took looking at, like, okay, well, where am I feeling, like, the overwhelm here? And then, I was like, this isn't going to change. Like, I need to walk away. I need to save myself. And that was the best decision that I could have made at the time, But I do believe there's also, like, knowledge of your core values. Like, for me, I also really wanted to move back to where I grew up. And, like, I didn't anticipate it being then, but I wanted to be, like, closer to my family and all the things. And so, like, things kind of aligned at the time. But, like, knowing what your core values are, like, is it financial freedom, therefore you want to have a certain level of pay? Is it freedom of schedule, where you don't want to work certain hours? Is it you want to be able to step into leadership roles and they're kind of, like, suppressing that and there's really no opportunity for growth? There's a lot of very toxic places out there, but there's also a lot of really healthy work environments. So it's about knowing what that looks like and then, like, knowing your worth and being like, yo, I am worthy of better. Like, I can thrive in a different environment and it's okay to walk away.
I love that. Yeah, and I think that goes back to what you said, that I'm not abnormal, right? It's abnormal working conditions or the workplace that
Totally.
that
Yeah.
yeah. I learned so much from this conversation, and I love all the positivity and the self-love that exudes from you. And wow, I mean, people who listen to you and who are mentored by you are so fortunate to have someone who has gone through it, right? And can
Thank you.
actually talk from experience. And I wanted to ask, as a final thing, is as a mentor, you have mentees who for sure pour their hearts out to you and tell you their stories of exhaustion and like, I don't know if I can do this anymore. I don't know if this is for me. How do you separate that in yourself and in your mind that, okay, I can't be discouraged by this too? And in that question, I guess it can segue to how do you decompress out of all of that, even also from work? How does self-care look like to you?
Yeah, I love that question. So it's funny, I was thinking about this the other day because, I feel like in my life, I have way more going on now than I ever did. But it's all about how you hold your boundaries firm. Like I have my job, I work pretty much full time, I have my business, I'm a mom. So I'm very strict with like when I do things. So like with clients, I am very much available, but I do tell them like on the weekends, like you may not get a response in an hour. Like it might be Monday, because I tend to spend time with my family. So I think communicating what your needs are and communicating your boundaries, and like with work, like I don't bring work home with me. Like I don't work home. I'm a time management ninja. It doesn't happen. It's against my religion.
Yeah.
So I don't do it.
Yeah.
And I teach tricks and I'm an epic ninja. Let me just tell you.
I love it.
I have dot phrases like you wouldn't believe. But yeah, it's like boundaries and like self-advocacy. Like self-care to me is boundaries, self-advocacy, like asking for what you need and not being like feeling guilty about that. Like kind of letting go of that messaging that, we have to be like earning rest and all the things. And then like leaving work at work. And for me, that looks like eating really yummy food with friends and traveling and spending time with my family and going. I love like going to the ocean. We're so fortunate that we live in Maine, so it's like very close by. I love being like in the woods. I love spending time with friends and like game nights and rubber. I love having fun. And I honestly, it's one of my core values. So it's something that I bring into like what I do with my mentees. Like personal development and burnout prevention and these topics don't have to feel yucky. It gets to be fun. We deserve to have fun and like be our confident selves and feel really good. And that's what I'm all about.
Wow, I love all of that. I mean, in the world of social media where there's so many ideals and so much comparison, right? Which, even fuels all the imposter syndrome and, like, why is my journey not looking like their journey? There's people, lights like you, who remind people that, it's okay, that we all have our own timelines, that we can set boundaries, and that it is possible that in such a busy and loud world that we can develop techniques where we can have self-care, just be happy and content, right?
And like even on those bad days, like embracing the fact that like there's so many things that we get to do. I think a lot of times like it's like, oh, like why me, why this, and like that's okay, but like dwelling in that just doesn't serve you. And it's like important to like recognize that there's so many things that we're a work in progress for, but like think about how far you've come and get excited about the journey ahead. Like what do you want that to look like? And what is one action today that you can take in that direction?
Yeah, I love that. Diana, thank you so much. It's been such a fun. If you could tell everybody about Self-Care Catalyst again and invite them to visit your website and off your link.
You're so sweet. So my website has like a ton of free resources, information about mentorship. There's lots of like downloadable like workbooks and affirmations and planning guides and all the things. It's www.selfcarecatalyst.com. And then of course my Instagram has like tons of content about burnout prevention, healthcare provider, specifically nurse and well-being. I'm always around in the DMs if you guys have questions or need support, or like you're not sure where to start, or you're like, I want to know more about imposter syndrome. Where do I find it? Because like my feed is kind of slow. Just let me know and I'll like point you in the right direction.
Yes. Diana, thank you so much. like I said earlier, we've been playing this for months.
I know,
And
it's so fun.
I can't believe that it has come. I know time flew so quickly, but we're here, and I love their conversation, and I hope you have a great rest of the night. And I am so hopeful, and I know that this will help so many people. Diana, thank you for everything that you do, and thank you for joining me tonight. So much, everybody.
Take care.
We have now reached the end of the story. Thank you so much for listening to this episode of Friends of Franz. I hope you had an enjoyable adventure learning about our expert guest, their work, and why they do the things that they do. Please check out the rest of the series available on all podcast platforms. Please also consider following the podcast on the platform that you prefer, turn on the alerts for new episodes so you don't miss new stories, and give us a rating to support the show. You can find more updates on the podcast's official Instagram at Friends of Franz Pod, or my personal Instagram at Chris Franz. That's without the I, because there is no I in team. I'm kidding. Someone already took the username. Have a great day or night, everybody!